How to survive in Korea. Workplace. Step 1. Lunchtime. The most important morning routine is to check today's menu. Food is essential for survival. Memorize today's menu. The highlight of office life. Lunchtime. Rice in the bottom left, soup in the bottom right. The top is for the sides. The sauce and the spoon go here. This is the basic layout, but it's a bit odd to switch rice and soup. When you're done, pour the leftovers into the soup bowl. It doesn't look that appetizing, so wait until others are done eating. Step 2. Neng, nep, nenep. These are the most used expressions at work. Choose the most appropriate form. Neng, nep, nenep. Remember that the formal ne can sound a bit stiff. Did you just say yes? Absolutely not acceptable. You want to find the right word for the right occasion. Step 3. Desteria. Desteria is the oasis in the desert. Show them your character. If you're not the diligent type, get a stooky plant. Work is tough. Laugh and the whole world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. Stay put, like the stooky that survives in the desert. Hang in there until the end. Of course, you can always quit. You matter more than anything else. Step 4. Survival kit. Every worker needs a survival kit. Survival kit level 1. This position gets the most exposure. Grab one when you need a sugar boost. Always keep a few treats you can offer your co-workers. Survival kit level 2. These are for hunger pangs before and after a meal. You'll need them when you take a coffee break with your office buddies. Survival kit level 3. Trash talking your boss with your soulmate. Did you survive in the workplace? Office romance? Be careful. Even the photocopier knows all the gossip.
In our headlines on this Thursday, February 6th, here in South Korea. The 6th hearing into the president's impeachment trial began early on this Thursday at the Constitutional Court, again with key testimonies from military officials who were involved in the brief imposition of martial law on December 3rd. Meanwhile, authorities here are restricting access to Chinese AI service, DeepSeek, on government devices amid data security concerns which appear to be fueling similar restrictions in a number of different countries. And on the trade front, findings for 2024 show Korea's current account surplus more than tripled on year to hit over $99 billion on the back of stellar exports and greater dividend income. We start yet again at the Constitutional Court, where the 6th hearing began earlier today with President Yoon Suk-yeol in attendance as a new lineup of witnesses were grilled into the events surrounding the evening of December 3rd. For more, our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young joins us live. Soo-young, it's good to have you on. So the court session today, that is, opened in the morning, I hear.
That's right, Sonny. There were strong clashes today here in the courtroom, where the key question was really whether President Yoon had ordered the physical removal of legislators from the National Assembly on December 3rd. And, well, there are very fiery exchanges made as former Army Special Warfare Commander Kwon Young-se delivered his testimony at the request of the National Assembly's impeachment panel. His previous statement clashes with the claims of President Yoon and former Defense Minister Kim Yong-yeon that the military was ordered to remove agents rather than lawmakers from the National Assembly. Kwon said in his phone call with Yoon that because there were no troops inside the main assembly building at the time, he understood the president told him to remove legislators. Then during the testimony, he admitted that he heard the president tell him to pull out the numbers, or inwon in Korean, not legislators, or 의원 in Korean, inside the National Assembly. He repeated his previous claim that the president and the defense minister did not want the number of legislators in the assembly to reach 150, the number of votes needed to pass a motion, including to revoke martial law. To this, President Yoon himself spoke out, saying that he had not used the word numbers when there are words such as people or agents to refer to troops. He stated that if he'd asked for 151 plus legislators to be removed, then there would have been a back and forth between him and the commanders on the ground to discuss the feasibility. Kim Yoon-se, commander of the 770th Special Mission Battalion, who led the break-in at the National Assembly, also testified today. He said Commander Kwak Jong-gun did say the number of people should not exceed 150, but noted he seemed to be relaying instructions from a higher authority rather than issuing a command. Kim said he did not receive any orders to remove or restrict the movement of legislators in the National Assembly, but to lock down the building as ordered. He added that he and the troops were deployed in uniform straight from standard training. Both Kwak and Kim say that they've been ordered to lock down the National Assembly and then decided that the situation would be impossible. Now, Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Park Chun-seop also began his testimony with questions likely focusing on the opposition-led parliament slashing the government's budget, which Yoon claims led to a state of national emergency, thereby justifying his martial law.
Meanwhile, Seong, the hearings are set to end next Thursday. Are we looking at a possible extension of these hearings, or will next Thursday be the final session?
Well, looking at how things are going, it seems likely that the court will have to schedule more hearing dates beyond the initial February 13th deadline. And the court announced today that there's going to be an additional witness added to the list, and that's Cho Sung-yeon, commander of the 1st Security Group under the Capital Defense Command. Now, the decision comes after Capital Defense Commander Lee Jin-woo, a key witness in Tuesday's hearing, refused to answer crucial questions to verify the orders that were given, including by President Yoon on the evening of December 3rd. According to prosecutors' findings included in Yoon's indictment, Cho relayed orders by Lee Jin-woo to forcibly remove lawmakers from the National Assembly and ordered troops to assist the Special Warfare Command in clearing a passage to drag lawmakers out. His testimony is scheduled for next Thursday at 5 p.m. Now, if the justices add more hearing dates, then it's likely that the verdict of the trial would come around March, considering that it took about 10 days for former President Park Geun-hye's ruling to be issued. Now, the court has been very determined to expedite proceedings, while Yoon's lawyers have been calling to slow down the pace of the twice-a-week hearings to once a week, given that Yoon's criminal trial will begin in 2 weeks' time.
Right, I see. All right, Seong, thank you for the latest on the impeachment trial. That was our Oh Seong reporting live from the Constitutional Court. Meanwhile, at the National Assembly today, Acting President Choi Sang-mok attended a hearing led by lawmakers into charges of insurrection against the Yoon administration. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
During a third assembly hearing on Thursday into allegations of insurrection by the president and some of his ministers, lawmakers directed their questions to Acting President Choi Sang-mok. The spotlight was on a controversial note Choi received on December 3rd, ordering the preparation of a budget for an emergency legislative body, presumably to replace the elected National Assembly. President Yoon previously said in his third impeachment hearing at the Constitutional Court that he learned about the note through media reports. Opposition party lawmakers on the special committee sought to determine whether President Yoon issued instructions to certain cabinet members through written notes at the time. Choi reaffirmed that he received the note but did not review it immediately.
If the emergency legislative body, as mentioned in the note, forcibly dissolved the National Assembly and replaced it, wouldn't that be an unconstitutional body?
I'm not aware of that matter.
Meanwhile, ruling party lawmakers claim that appointing Ma Eun-hyuk to the Constitutional Court would be unfair due to the lack of a bipartisan consensus.
I believe there was no bipartisan agreement on nominee Ma Eun-hyuk. What do you think?
I would say that there was no agreement between the parties at that time.
Thursday's session was also attended by Prime Minister Han Duk-soo and other officials. Han expressed concern that if the Constitutional Court doesn't make a decision the public can accept, it could cause national division. Ahead of Thursday's hearing, the committee called 25 witnesses, including President Yoon, Acting President Choi, and former Defense Minister Kim Yong-se to testify. However, 9 of them, including Yoon and Kim, submitted excuses to not appear. At the beginning of the hearings, the opposition-led committee issued orders for Kim and 3 others involved in Yoon's martial law declaration to appear as witnesses. The committee's investigation is scheduled to end on February 13th, but the opposition is considering pushing for an extension, citing the absence of key witnesses at previous hearings. 신하영, Arirang News.
And the ruling People Power Party is poised, that is, to focus on party reform and change. Intentions to this end were shared by its interim chairman Kwon Young-se during a press conference earlier on this Thursday, as he observed that, quote, some stability and harmony had been restored. Acknowledging what he referred to as a recent discord between the ruling party and the government, Kwon said the PPP will now seek to improve its image through its policies, especially those regarding the economy. He pointed to easing restrictions on business operations by Korea's conglomerates to boost growth as one potential policy. Access to Chinese AI service DeepSeek is being restricted on government devices here in Korea over data security concerns. Our Moon Hae-ryun has details.
South Korean government agencies have restricted access to DeepSeek, a Chinese AI service accused of excessive data collection. On Thursday, the Ministry of Environment revealed that it blocked DeepSeek on all online computers as of 9 a.m., while the Ministry of Economy and Finance stated its plans to restrict access on computers connected to external networks. These measures come a day after the Ministry of National Defense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy announced that access to DeepSeek on computers connected to external networks had been banned. These ministries handle a significant amount of classified information related to diplomacy, national security, and trade. A Defense Ministry official told reporters that the decision was made due to widespread concerns about the AI platform. This comes after the Ministry of the Interior and Safety issued an advisory to central government ministries and 17 metropolitan and provincial governments, urging officials to be cautious when using generative AI services like DeepSeek and ChatGPT. While the advisory did not explicitly call for a ban, it warned against entering sensitive or personal information into AI platforms, citing potential security risks. South Korea's Personal Information Protection Commission sent an inquiry to DeepSeek's headquarters, requesting details on its data collection and storage practices, but the company has yet to respond. The private sector is also taking action, with major Korean tech companies restricting the use of DeepSeek. Kakao, an official partner of OpenAI, recently banned its employees from using the service for work by citing security concerns. LGU Plus also issued a security notice banning employees from using DeepSeek for work on the company network and advised employees to avoid using DeepSeek on personal devices. Samsung, SK, and LG Electronics have long prohibited unauthorized software on company devices, while Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power recently reinforced its AI security policies, banning DeepSeek on its internal network. DeepSeek has also been banned from government computers in Australia and Japan, while Italy has gone as far as banning the app entirely. In the US, the state of Texas has blocked DeepSeek from government-owned devices. Meanwhile, the European Union and the UK are closely monitoring potential risks associated with Chinese AI platforms. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In other news, following a stellar performance last December, Korea's current account marked a remarkable surplus last year at over $99 billion, more than triple the size noted in 2023. Our Choi Min-jung covers the latest numbers.
South Korea's current account surplus hit an all-time high for the month of December. According to data released by the Bank of Korea on Thursday, the country posted an almost $12.4 billion current account surplus in December 2024. This marks the largest December surplus on record. It's also the third largest monthly surplus in South Korean history. The hike was thanks to strong exports and increased dividend earnings. Exports increased annually by 6.6% to $63 billion. The continued growth in semiconductors and IT products, along with a slowdown in the decline of non-IT products such as automobiles, contributed to a higher export growth rate. The primary income account, or the net income earned by a country from its foreign investments, as well as wages paid to foreign workers, posted a $4.8 billion surplus in December. In particular, the dividend income surplus reached $3.6 billion. As a result, the cumulative current account surplus for 2024 reached $99 billion, more than 3 times the surplus in 2023. On an annual basis, this is the second largest current account surplus on record, following the figure posted in 2015. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The Trump administration's protectionist trade policy is taking shape with a fresh tariff on China and briefly postponed tariffs on Canada and Mexico amid renewed threats of blanket taxes on all imports to the U.S. So what does this mean for export-oriented countries like South Korea? Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin seeks to answer that question.
South Korea faces both risks and opportunities as global trade dynamics shift amid rising tariff tensions. While U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday local time decided to pause the implementation of the tariffs for Canada and Mexico for at least 30 days, his 10% tariff on Chinese products took effect just after midnight Tuesday. But these tariffs could potentially benefit Korean exporters who'd gain a competitive edge in supplying products that China previously dominated. According to one expert, U.S. companies may shift their supply chains to South Korean firms.
In markets like the semiconductor industry, companies like SK Hynix already have a strong presence. And if tariffs are imposed on China, South Korean products could gain an even greater competitive advantage.
As semiconductors are South Korea's top export item, this would boost the country's trade surplus. But risks remain, as expected drop in exports of Chinese goods to the U.S. may reduce Chinese orders for South Korea's key intermediate goods.
Our country's export structure depends on selling intermediate goods to China for them to be assembled into the final product for export to other countries. So if demand for China's goods declines, demand for these intermediate goods will also decline.
And with growing concerns of possible tariffs on the EU and South Korea as well, South Korea's government and its companies are being proactive. The South Korean government announced Wednesday that it will establish a strategic advanced industry fund worth over 34 trillion Korean won, or around $23 billion to boost industrial competitiveness.
Ongoing global trade uncertainties, including additional tariffs on China, require close attention. We'll establish a strategic advanced industry fund at the Industrial Bank of Korea to support high-tech sectors like batteries and biotech.
As for the private sector, SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won will lead a delegation to Washington, D.C. on the 19th to discuss response strategies, with a meeting with Trump reportedly under discussion. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Seoul and Washington's national security advisors have agreed to meet at an early date in the U.S. to address a host of regional and global concerns. Now, intentions to this end were shared during recent talks on the phone between Shin Won-sik and Michael Waltz. According to the top office here, the two officials touched upon the bilateral alliance as well as the trilateral partnership with Japan amid North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile threats. Shin also voiced his confidence in the future of South Korea's ties with the U.S. under the Trump administration, while Waltz shared a similar expectation of greater cooperation across a range of fields. On the international front, Washington's friends and foes alike have voiced their firm opposition to the idea of the U.S. taking over the Gaza Strip. Our Lee Seung-jae covers the condemnation.
During a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump proposed that the U.S. take over the Gaza Strip and resettle the Palestinian population. His plans to turn the area into the Riviera of the Middle East were heavily criticized by Western allies on Wednesday. The French Ministry of Foreign Affairs stressed its opposition to any forced displacement of Gazans, adding that Paris will continue to push for the implementation of a two-state solution. Italian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said while Italy will look into Trump's plans, it still remains in favor of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. German President Walter Steinmeier slammed the plan, calling it unacceptable, adding that such actions will form a serious basis for the upcoming talks between the regional actors and the U.S. administration. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also criticized the proposal, calling the relocation of Gazans a form of ethnic cleansing.
In the search for solutions, we must not make the problem worse. It is vital to stay true to the bedrock of international law. It is essential to avoid any form of ethnic cleansing.
The paramilitary Palestinian Islamic Jihad group denounced what it called racist comments by the U.S. leader and vowed to fight his plans in Gaza. In a statement on Wednesday, the group said that Israel's attempt to force Palestinians to leave Gaza failed and that Trump's proposal will also fail. Despite the international condemnation, President Trump said Wednesday at the White House that everybody loves his proposal for a U.S. takeover of Gaza. Trump's officials were quick to clear up what they believe were misunderstandings, as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Trump's plan was a unique offer to step in and clear debris and destruction in Gaza. He added that the move to relocate the Gazans was not meant as a hostile move and that details still needed to be worked out. With Trump also considering U.S. troop deployment to the Gaza Strip, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said Trump is willing to think outside the box, look for new and unique dynamic ways to solve problems, adding that the Pentagon is prepared to look at all options. 이승재, Arirang News.
Over in the Greek island of Santorini, rampant tremors have forced two-thirds of the residents on the island to evacuate. According to local broadcasters citing authorities there, more than 11,000 of the island's 16,000 residents have sought shelter on the mainland. Of them, 7,000 took ferries, while 4,000 left on planes. There have been hundreds of quakes in the region around Santorini over the past 2 weeks. No casualties, no damages have been reported, but concerns are mounting that the series of small tremors may be a precursor to a major earthquake. On the entertainment front, a host of K-pop artists are scheduled to take the global stage this year as well to meet with their overseas fans. G-Dragon is set to headline the opening day of this year's Head in the Clouds, which kicks off for 2 days on May 31st in Los Angeles. He is also poised to release his newest solo album in over a decade later this month. Meanwhile, K-pop girl group BLACKPINK will soon embark on a world tour as revealed in a teaser video. Now, this will be the group's first global road trip in well over a year.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The United States Postal Service has announced that it's resumed accepting parcels from China and Hong Kong following a brief suspension after recent tariff changes. On Wednesday, the U.S. Postal Service announced it would resume accepting all inbound mail and packages from China and Hong Kong, reversing a suspension that lasted less than a day. The initial halt came in response to the U.S. government's imposition of a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, as well as the suspension of a customs exception, which previously allowed packages valued under $800 to enter the country duty-free. The brief suspension had raised concerns among e-commerce platforms like Temu and Shein, which heavily rely on direct shipments from China to U.S. consumers. Following the resumption of accepting parcels, Temu's parent company, PDD Holdings, saw its stock recover some losses. The UK has announced an additional financial aid package to support Ukraine during a visit by the British Foreign Secretary to Kyiv. Approximately $68.7 million in financial support was announced by British Foreign Secretary David Lammy on Wednesday. The new aid package aims to bolster Ukraine's resilience against Russian aggression and is designed to cover energy initiatives, economic recovery, and social services. The announcement follows the recent signing of a 100-year partnership agreement between the UK and Ukraine in January, aimed at strengthening defense cooperation and economic collaboration. Since Russia's invasion, the UK has committed a total of £977 million, or approximately $1.22 billion in support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine conducted a major exchange of prisoners of war on Wednesday, with each side releasing 150 soldiers. The swap took place in an undisclosed location mediated by the United Arab Emirates. The released Russian soldiers were transported to Belarus for medical examination and rehabilitation before returning to Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the return of Ukrainian personnel, including members of the Navy, Air Force, and ground forces. The last exchange of prisoners took place in December of last year. In the U.S., a statue of Portuguese football star Cristiano Ronaldo was unveiled in New York City's Times Square on Wednesday. Standing at approximately 366 centimeters tall, the bronze statue was created by sculptor Sergio Fornari to celebrate Ronaldo's 40th birthday. The statue was mounted on a truck and painted in green, red, and gold, the colors of the Portuguese flag. The event attracted a large crowd of fans, many waving Portuguese flags and chanting Ronaldo's signature, Su Celebration. The statue will be taken on a tour around the world by the creator. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
This morning, there was a severe cold spell below -10 degrees Celsius nationwide. Cold wave warnings and advisories have been still in effect in most parts of the country for several days. With Arctic cold in Seoul, the Han River is partially frozen. More snow has been falling across the country, including Seoul, from this afternoon. By tomorrow morning, up to 15 centimeters of snow will fall on the west coast of Chungcheongnam-do province and the Jeollado provinces, 1 to 5 centimeters in the Seoul metropolitan area, and 3 to 8 centimeters in the rest of the central inland areas. Most of this snow will ease off from tomorrow afternoon, but more snow is forecast in the Jeollado provinces and on Jeju Island until this weekend. Tomorrow's Seoul will be as cold as today at -12 degrees and Daegu at -4 degrees. Highs will move up to -6 degrees in Seoul, -2 degrees in Gwangju and Daegu. The cold wave is expected to continue until this weekend and then recover back to normal readings. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Right, those are the top stories at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for our panel session coming up right after this break.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Kalbijim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait, did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
Step into a world where culture speaks beyond words, bridging hearts and minds. Hello, this is your DJ Sujung for Culture Crunch. Crunch on a new flavour of K-culture with me every day.
다양한 장르의 공연을 한 자리에서 만나보실 수 있는 어디에서도 보지 못한 아주 특별한 공연입니다.
Asian defense equipment makers spurred rallies of related shares on stock markets last year as investors bet big on global rearmament, with security taking priority amid geopolitical tensions. That being said, on Press Perspective today, we touch upon Korea's defense industry. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective for this Thursday, February 6th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Now, bolstering defense is a national priority for any country, and Korean arms makers are hoping to better advance this global agenda. For more on this, I have Stephen Borowick, a staff writer for Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia. Stephen, it's great to have you back.
Always a pleasure.
I also have Professor Kim Jun-mo at Konkuk University live on the line. Professor Kim, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure to be with you today.
Right. Stephen, we'll start here in the studio. Asian defense stocks rallied last year with investors betting that this particular region is poised to fuel a rearmament boom. Can we start with that reality and also, of course, your prospects?
I think it comes from just a general sense that more kind of geopolitical tensions and uncertainty are in the offing. And particularly now with Trump having taken leadership in Washington, Trump has said a lot about not wishing to come to the defense of allies, not wishing to play the U.S.'s customary stabilizing or supportive role in international affairs. He's talked about taking a much more transactional approach to the U.S.'s foreign policy and wanting to kind of only do things that are narrowly in the United States' interest. And I think a lot of observers interpreted that as a good occasion to look into potential alternatives. And so as I'm sure we'll discuss in a lot more detail, South Korean defense firms have risen to this challenge, to this opportunity, and they have bolstered their own efforts to expand their capacity and efforts to seek out new markets and to fill these kinds of gaps, specifically related to the growing uncertainty caused by Russia and by China, and all kind of in tandem with what's happening in the U.S. So I think, what happens in the market tend to be a reflection of concern, of worries over different things. So I would interpret the spike in these defense stocks as kind of hedging against increasing geopolitical risk.
Right, and perhaps staying with what Stephen has just said, Professor Kim, do you believe that Mr. Trump's return to the White House is likely to fuel greater global defense spending?
Yes, basically President Trump's policy orientation is U.S. first approach in trade, economy, and defense, which means he will push for increased defense spending to allies in Europe and Asia. The punchline is that more defense budget requested for government means more business opportunities for arms contractors worldwide.
Right. Meanwhile, Stephen, quite a number of media outlets have covered the reasons behind Korea's remarkable advances in arms development. Could you share these reasons with us? And what are your thoughts regarding Korea's competence, if you will, with regard to arms development?
It's a story that is kind of in the same vein as South Korea's ascendance in a number of other industries, whether it be shipbuilding or manufacturing or whatever. It's a cooperative relationship between governments and business and an investment in manufacturing capacity. And this all kind of goes back to the history of the Korean War and the South Korea feeling as though it needs to have a strong military and arm itself against the threat posed by North Korea. But what we've seen more recently is that the government has transitioned to not simply seeing its arms industry as a source of its own defense, but also as a quite significant commercial opportunity. And South Korean arms makers have been able to build a reputation for being fast, for being reliable, for being accurate, and have been able to manage, expand their client bases based on that, based on being able to quickly deliver armaments and artillery shells and all kinds of other things. And just in recent years, as I think we'll touch on more later, they've really taken advantage of the opportunity presented by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, in the fact that you have a lot of NATO countries who are in need of quick delivery of a lot of shells so that they can be used on the battlefield. And there just has not been, in Europe and in the US and some other places, there just has not been the capacity to fill this as quickly. Countries in Europe have, over the past decades, generally drawn down their defense capacity and their manufacturing capacity more generally. South Korea hasn't done that, so it was kind of in the right place at the right time. And it's, I think the kind of current moment is a little bit different, but you look back at the past couple of years, companies like Hyundai Rotem and Hanwha have signed these massive deals, and it's led to a lot of optimism.
Right, indeed. And staying with that, Professor Kim, could you tell us a bit more about Korea's defense industry's advances, steady advances that will be into the global arms market? What do you believe has been driving Korea's strides in defense?
Okay. While taking increased international tension and conflict and reduced arms production capacity worldwide after the Cold War period as a given backdrop, I can mention about three factors. First is, as Stephen mentioned, fast delivery, flexibility, and quality of the defense products by the Korean companies. First, while the competing industry will take longer time frame, Korean defense industry could deliver the product in a year or two, so it's very fast. And regarding flexibility, Korean defense firms offer very flexible, customer-oriented local production, technical assistance, allowing buyer countries customized design options. So that's very flexible choice. And regarding quality, in many fields, Korean defense products reach the top-notch level in international market. So that's the first factor. Second factor would be cost advantage. With strong backups by civilian sectors, together with Korea's own defense needs, pushed Korea to produce arms in large volumes. That gave us a so-called economies of scope and connected to cost advantage. Thirdly, Korean defense products have maintained NATO and U.S. Technical compatibility, and that gives buyer countries easiness of maintenance, savings in education and training. So those are the factors for big stride these days.
Right, I see. And Stephen, even before Mr. Trump's return to the White House, the government here had said that a second Trump administration would serve to boost Korea's arms exports. What exactly was said, and do you agree?
This was official from the DAPA, the Defense Acquisition Body. I can't remember the exact wording of the acronym, but he said that basically Trump's return to the office in Washington was both a challenge and an opportunity, just in that Trump could look to withdraw or decline U.S. support for certain allies, and he could encourage them to boost their own defense spending and take responsibility for this themselves, and that this could thereby create opportunities for Korean arms makers. And that's all plausible. I mean, as we've laid out, there's kind of increasing need for defense production in areas around the world, and there are places that are looking for someone like Korea to be able to quickly and flexibly fill these gaps. So, I mean, I think we're all hoping that just because of the return of Trump to Washington, that it's not going to lead to anything like what we've seen in Ukraine over the past few years. I mean, like, that's not in anybody's best interests. But I do think that Korean policymakers are always looking for potential growth engines and always looking for potential ways that South Korea can contribute to the overall stability of the world. And this is a part of that. Right. Professor Kim, Korea hopes to become the world's fourth largest weapons exporter, arms exporter that is, by the year 2027. How feasible do you suppose is this particular plan?
Yes. Last year, Korean defense industry was expected to reach its export goal of $20 billion US. But that goal will be very likely to be postponed to this year. So this year, we are very likely to attain that goal. And last year, buyer countries' domestic reasons, together with Korea's domestic environment, had made this goal attainment delayed for several months. But broadly speaking, Korea becoming number 4 arms exporting country by 2027 is broadly feasible due to increased tensions and conflicts here and there, and together with President Trump's foreign policy. One thing to mention is a very peculiar nature of the defense market and the arms procurement business. That is, once procured, weapons are usually used at least 2 or 3 decades, and decision to buy weapons takes longer time, and the defense market themselves are very volatile, and they have their own business cycles. Yet, it is more realistic that Korea can become number 4 arms exporting country by 2027 compared to 2 years ago. So I'm very optimistic about that.
Right, I see. Stephen, earlier last year, you also covered K-Defense, if you will. Could you share with us details about your particular coverage?
I think my editors were interested in it because of the parallels with the rise of certain other Korean businesses. You know, you had K-drama and K-pop, and here's K-Defense, the latest glossy and high-tech and advanced industry to come out of South Korea. So when I embarked on this story, it was when we were reaching the, I guess, 2-year anniversary of the Ukraine war. We're now around the 3rd, and it was about how South Korea was taking advantage of this moment and all the growth and all the exciting things that were happening. I think we've basically gone over the kind of main points that I made in that article, but to introduce something a bit new to our conversation, and I ended that article on kind of throwing it forward and kind of seeing like what the perhaps long-term potential of K-Defense was, because I had one expert who told me that it's important to keep in mind that this is a very kind of unstable industry. In the arms industry, you could have years where you have a bunch of orders and you have really impressive volume of both, money that's coming in and product that's going out. But then you might have, 2 or 3 or 4 years where things slow down. And so South Korea has expanded its profile, particularly in the countries that are on the eastern flank of NATO, such as Poland. And as Professor Kim laid out, there's a specific compatibility there because South Korea has worked with the U.S. military for so long, and those are NATO countries. And so it's quite easy for those two sides to join hands and to have compatibility. But kind of where do they go from there? I mean, if they have solved this matter of expanding capacity to meet the needs of the Ukrainian military as they confront Russia, what then happens? Is there another part of the world where there is expanding demand? And I think that's a question that has not quite been solved yet, as to where K-Defense might be 5 or 10 years from now. Will this momentum continue? I'm not quite qualified to answer that question. So.
Right, but for now, Korea is hoping to become the 4th largest weapons exporter by the year 2027. That being said, Stephen, what can you tell us about the competition that Korea faces? I mean, what do we know about the top 5 arms exporters at the moment?
Well, we know that number 1 is the U.S., and they're number 1 by a very significant margin. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but they're, something like 2 times ahead of the next closest competitor. And then following them, you have France, Russia, China, and Germany. And so I would just say that, as pertains to South Korea's efforts to move up this ladder, one thing we need to point out is that the arms industry is like any other industry in that it is governed to a large extent by relationships. These are people who have been doing business for a long time. These are countries and governments that have longstanding institutional relationships with certain providers, and in a lot of cases they have the companies that they customarily work with, and they're probably happy with them, and it's hard for a new kind of upstart competitor to break into some of these more high value and more advanced chains. If you look at South Korea's drastic progress over the past few years, it was filling a particular niche. It was working with countries like Poland. So is South Korea going to be able to break into the real big time and to be able to, the goal, I believe, is to be number 4. It's not to overtake the U.S. or France. But I think South Korea has, as we've laid out, definite advantages in terms of speed and reliability and a kind of stable manufacturing base. I've even heard that, I had one expert tell me a little while ago that the industry is actually transitioning to the point where they're having to subcontract out their production. They're getting so many orders that they are, going to Eastern Europe and going to other places, and they are teaching firms there to manufacture on their behalf. And that's kind of a new thing for the industry. So we'll have to see where that goes.
Right, for sure. This is an impromptu question, Professor Kim, but earlier on when I asked you about the prospects of Korea securing its goal of becoming the 4th largest arms exporter within the next couple of years, that is 2027, you spoke about how that feasibility is higher now than it were, let's say, 2 years ago. Is that perhaps because of the violence we're seeing across the world right now, the war in Ukraine, the violence in the Middle East, and so forth?
Yes, Korean defense sector has keep knocking the doors for nearly recent 10 years. to enter to get the big chunk of market, but we should have our weapons or systems being tested at the right moment, at the right place. And the Ukraine crisis gave us a big open window to promote our products together with the Middle Eastern market. So that's why, compared to 2 years ago, we now have greater potential.
Right. Professor Kim, staying with this idea of arms exports, but perhaps moving a little bit into a more perhaps sensitive issue, there is also talk about whether or not perhaps South Korea may consider developing, perhaps, this is an idea among some pundits, of course, developing its own nuclear weapons, since North Korea's nuclear weapons, according to some members of the Trump administration, and including Mr. Trump himself, have been recognized or been called a nuclear power. Speaking strictly within your capacity as a scholar, Professor Kim, what are your thoughts on Korea perhaps developing its own nuclear weapons?
There have been a lot of restrictions, bars in approaching that area. So still there are many political hurdles, technical hurdles to reach there. But meaning, whenever a country is industrialized at the cutting edge technology and industry, including a lot of European nations, a lot of several Asian countries, we can broadly say those countries have technically very advanced near the forbidden weapon of nuclear arms. But to do that, we should make the situation environment with the international community that we have very desperate need to do that. Plus, we need to conform domestic political will of the people and political leaders. And after that, there are two options. One is doing the right thing, really doing the thing, or taking the technological readiness to do that and not doing that and going to the last moment before the actual production of the weapon to show the strong willingness to keep the country, protect the country.
Right, of course, to protect the country. Professor Kim, Abu Dhabi, the capital city of the UAE, it's poised to host the International Defense Exhibition and Conference later this month. What should we be keeping our eyes on?
Yes, IDEX, which is to be held in Abu Dhabi in UAE, is one of the most famous arms exhibition in the world. And it is especially famous for live firing exercise held each year. So this year, Korean defense contractors are there to promote their defense products ranging from K2 tanks, K9 Howitzers, and sophisticated missile systems and others. During recent years, Middle Eastern countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq have purchased our missile defense systems called Cheongung-2. And it is very likely in the future it can be extended to a far more advanced missile defense system called LSAM, which takes the higher altitude of terminal stage of incoming missiles. So we have great market potentials for sophisticated weapons. And Saudi Arabia is also known to be interested in ground weapon systems, including K2 tanks and K9 Howitzers. So that's a great potential area as well. And to better utilize this opportunity, in fact, we have sent a battalion of K2 tanks and K9 Howitzers now in UAE to have joint exercise with UAE. And in fact, the same team was in Qatar later last year to show the potentials for joint exercise and then promote the performance of those weapons. So that's the first strategy, to show them really. And second strategy would be customizing into local needs of those countries, and also going beyond the areas of defense cooperation, going into industrial cooperation packaged with defense deals.
Right, I see. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for taking my impromptu question and for your responses today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed.
Right, and Stephen, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, well, developing defense for the purpose of promoting peace is a policy that looks to be universally embraced, especially amid the current geopolitical landscape. Thank you for watching.
Curious about what's